Hey, thanks for clicking on my video. Today we're going to talk about fats, carbs, proteins, and nucleic acids, aka biomolecules. So let's hop right in. Over here on the left, you see your fats. Fats, for my purposes, are drawn in a really simplistic way just by a squiggly line. At each of the points of the squiggly line, there exists a carbon that is connected to a couple of hydrogens and or another carbon. And in general, if you recall from Gen Chem, maybe you heard it from a bio class or somewhere on the internet, you probably know that when it comes to carbon and hydrogen, there really is no difference in electronegativity. It's actually less than like 0.3, which means that for the most part, that sharing of electrons is equal. That being said, it's nonpolar. It doesn't matter how large or how small those fat chains are. There's never going to be a net dipole moment for hydrocarbons just because of how similar they are in electronegativity. They both share electrons in a similar way. If you saw my hydrogen bonding video, you probably recall water being a polar molecule. One fact about chemistry is that like dissolves like, and think about it in a way like water interacts well with water, and fat interacts well with fat, right? You have a bottle of oil, it's not doing much of anything. You have a bottle of water, it's not doing much of anything. You provide some type of dish to mix them in and then shake them up, you're going to get a separation of fat and water. And that's because water, which is polar, does not want to interact with something that is non-polar, such as oil. For the most part, fats can be non-polar. I would say more often than not when you're talking about which biomolecule is non-polar. For most of the time, you're going to say fats. But there do exist things like phospholipids that would allow some type of charge for the fat. Moving on to carbs, think about your sugar in your cabinet. Carbs is really an umbrella term for carbohydrates, and there are lots of different types of carbs. Potato has carbs in it, pasta, other types of vegetables and things like that. And also just, your simple sugar. Carbs are honestly, for the most part, polar, and that is because of the water components that are associated with them. So you can see I highlighted some carbons here, but there oftentimes you may see a hydroxyl group over here to the left, or maybe just an oxygen hanging around here. And these components add to the polarity of carbs, which is a direct contrast to fats. Proteins are really, 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 really complex. They can be polar or non-polar depending on their amino acid components. Depends on if you have something like tryptophan comprising most of your protein, it would be more non-polar. If you have something like glutamic acid or aspartic acid, it's going to be more polar. And that kind of determines which way it's going to interact with water. Is it going to hide from it, or is it going to try to associate itself with it? Nucleic acids, lastly, to give a quick rundown, are the information carrier biomolecules. Yes, fats, carbs, and proteins are all very important for their own reasons, right? Fats are good for storing some energy, and also, fats can give us a little bit of protection and cushion our organs. Carbs are good because they taste good, and there's also some energy associated with them. Think about glycolysis. Think about, you eat certain things and break them down for energy. Proteins are good for transporting other things. They're good for structural purposes. They're good for defense purposes. But nucleic acids are essentially what starts everything. They carry the information needed to code certain things like proteins. Think about DNA and RNA. DNA is double-stranded, and RNA is single-stranded for most of our purposes. So don't think too deeply into it because there are some exceptions. So this has been a quick rundown of each of the biomolecules. It's very hard to squeeze even this information into a short video. However, I hope whatever I have given you today was helpful, and I will see you in the next video.